Bonjour à tous, bienvenue, welcome to a new YouTube live, weekly YouTube live, and the last one that we will have on a Monday, because starting next week, we will switch to Sunday. I have run a little poll on my Telegram channels asking if it would be better for you guys if I would switch this live session from Monday to Sunday, and overwhelmingly the answer was yes. Sunday is much better. A lot more people will be able to join us. So we will see each other next Sunday instead of next Monday. And from now on, that will be Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So that's like the number one announcement. And I see we already have a couple of people in the chat. We have Linda and Connie. Hi, guys. Nice to see you again. This is so sweet that you're here. Today, the topic is 7 easy French structures that you can use at any level. So normally, these are the kind of things that I teach very extensively in my one-on-one sessions. A lot of what I do in my one-on-one coaching is helping the students identify the kind of shortcuts that they can use in order to speak French more efficiently or to express themselves more freely without having to learn a ton of vocabulary or a ton of grammar. So yes, at some point you do have to learn grammar. I'm not saying that grammar is completely useless. I'm a big fan of grammar. I definitely teach a lot of grammar. For example, in the French Fluency Accelerator, we have a lot of workshops that are about the more difficult grammar. But if you don't know those hacks, if you don't know the kind of things that I am going to share today, then you have basically you're in for a treat, because you have a potential for becoming instantly better just from learning these things. And this will work at any level. That's the beauty of it. So you could be a complete beginner, and then you would be able, well, not complete beginner, you need to know some words in order to use those structures, but very few, to be honest. So you could be a very basic learner, and you would benefit from those structures, and you could be a much more advanced learner if you do not know those structures and you do not know how to use them. Then you have the potential for becoming a lot better at French, just like that, throughout this one live session. So I'm super excited to be sharing those with you guys. These are things that I've shared here and there, but I don't think I've ever shared them all together. And I don't even think I've put them all on the list for today. But those are really 7 things that you can use, which would just give you such a huge boost in French. So another new thing that we have today is a worksheet. So I hope that some of you have it printed already. It's a worksheet that I made specifically for this class. It's brand new. That's even the date of today here. And in order to get this worksheet, you have 2 options. One option would be to open the email that I sent to you today to announce this live class and grab it from there. If you haven't got it, if you haven't received it, or if you haven't registered for my email before, well, that's too late for this option. It won't be sent again. But the other option is to go to my Telegram channel, and you'll be able to get it at any point. Even if you're watching this replay a long time from now, you should be able to find it on the Telegram channel by going to, if you, wait, I'm just going to show it to you again. If you click on my face on the top of the channel, you can go to, click on my face here, and then you scroll up, you can go to files, and then all the files will be here, and you'll see the last one here is, no, the last one on top is 7 easy hacks, French Fluency, FrenchFluencyLab.pdf. So of course there will be more accumulated in the future, but that is where we store the worksheets on Telegram. And there are a couple more things that I did before. You have lots of little nuggets and little presents on Telegram. So if you haven't been there yet, please go, please join. You'll have the link in the description from this video. If you don't know what that is about, there is also a Telegram tutorial on this channel, and I think the link is also in the description. Otherwise, you can type just my name, Angel Preto, and Telegram tutorial, and you'll be able to access that video, and I explain everything on that video on how that works. And the reason why I decided to make the worksheet is to celebrate that we just reached over 100 Telegram subscribers. So there's exactly 101 of us on that channel now. I'm super pleased that so many people are listening to me every week. I try to post regularly there. Sometimes it's a bit sporadic. Sometimes I post more. Sometimes I post things that I have enjoyed watching in French or reading in French. Sometimes I post thoughts from my coaching sessions and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a direct line to my brain and a direct line to the new kind of thing that I come up with in my work, even more frequently than in this live class. And I will always announce the live class and the topic of the live class and share all the worksheets on Telegram. So I will strive to make a new worksheet for every live class. I can't promise that I will make one every time, because maybe sometimes there will be a topic that doesn't really work with a worksheet, or sometimes I won't have time or whatever. I'm not promising anything, but I will strive because I think it's really useful. So if you can have it, that's good to have it printed. And then we'll get into the content. I'll just check through the comments because there's a complete discussion. I'll see if there's any question or anything. So Connie and Linda are just discussing each other. All right. If you're not on there, you're missing out, just saying. So I believe this is about Telegram. Yeah, I mean, definitely, this is a really nice place to be. I created the channel because I follow other people, French people, actually. I have yet to find someone who has made a great channel who is not French. I'm sure it exists in other countries, but it's just an app that's not very famous in the US or in the English-speaking realm. I think it's because it was created by two Russian guys, so there's a bit of like a mistrust maybe, but the app is really cool. It's a lot calmer and quieter than YouTube or Instagram, or it's not actually a social media app. So when you're on a channel, you can read everything that the person has created, and you won't be bombarded by something that someone else has made. So I really like that. I have actually shared on Telegram my other favorite Telegram channels. So once you're there on the app, you can follow other French channels, and it's a great way to have your daily French bath. It's exactly 6 minutes 42, and I've said daily French bath. Which that was fast, but honestly, not so much is about the daily French bath today, so that's good that I put it in. So I hope you have your French fluency hack checklist. I'm wondering if I told you everything that I needed to tell you. Well, I can tell you to join the French Fluency Accelerator, especially if you like the kind of things that we will do today. In the French Fluency Accelerator, I really go extensively into the grammar and into how you can use each part, not just the ones that are easy, because what I'm going to share today is what's easy, what's a quick win. There are things that you can take away and start applying right now. But of course, at some point, you want to also learn the things that are quote unquote harder and that are just not so easy to grasp. So the French Fluency Accelerator is a great place for that, because we have long form content. We have some modules that are over 2 hours where I will choose, actually, the students chose the topics and I made a workshop about that topic. And I explained everything really in depth. So we have 2 about verbs so far. One is about verbs in general, with like an overview of the French conjugations, and one is about the past. And we're about to make the 3rd one about verbs, which will be about the subjunctive. It's called taming the subjunctive, not mastering the subjunctive, like many workshops are called, because I don't think you can actually easily master the subjunctive with a workshop, but you can at least tame it and not be afraid of it, because I know that many of my students are still a bit wary of the subjunctive. So I really look forward to making this workshop this month. It's going to be on May 19th at 5 p.m. my time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern, I believe. But of course, it's also going to be recorded and it will be in the member zone forever. So if you miss it, it's fine. But yeah, please join us in the French Fluency Accelerator. This will be also the place to grab a spot to work with me if you want to. I can't guarantee that there ever will be a point where I will announce spots outside of the French Accelerator, because we're having more and more students there, and there just are more students there joining than there are spots to work with me. Another thing that you can do when you're a student of the French Fluency Accelerator is that you can book sessions with me independently of being on a actual weekly coaching program. You can just decide that you want to buy, say, 4 sessions and use them throughout a year or so, just to have a little bit more guidance. So you can decide to work with me more sporadically if you're in the French Accelerator, as opposed to being on a full coaching program, which is a really big commitment. All right, so enough babbling. I'm sure you're all waiting for the 7 acts. So let's start with number 1. It's called the universal hack on the worksheet. And the universal hack, I have a video on this channel that explains it, which is called the instant fluency hack. But it's really the biggest hack that you need to know is that you have to make shorter sentences. So if you have followed what I've been doing, you certainly have heard me say before, it's not new to you, but seriously, every single coach, not every single coaching session, but every single session that I'm with a student that's either beginner or intermediate student, I will tell them to make their sentence shorter. It has to be a reflex. If it is complicated for you to express yourself, the biggest, fastest win is going to make your sentence shorter. So one idea is one sentence. It's super critical because the things that happen is that when you make really long sentences, you are very likely to use connectors that will require you to use complex grammar. So things like the subjunctive that I was mentioning just before, things like the conditionnel or weird stuff like what we call concordance des temps, which means that the fact that you pick a tense at the beginning will require you to change the other tenses, even though it doesn't make sense in English, it does in French. And just the longer your sentences get, the harder it will get with the grammar, because the more likely you are to trigger some French quirk which you don't master, which is why the universal hack number one, the first thing to wrap your head around is to make shorter sentences. And I know it's hard. We're used to being adults and to speak with long sentences. I speak with long sentences in English. I speak with long sentences in French. In German, I don't dare so much, to be honest. Like I've had to place some phone calls throughout the week. I have to place more phone calls tomorrow. I should have done it today, but I didn't have time. And I'm already kind of thinking of like, okay, how am I going to make my sentences shorter to explain these complex situations that I have with the insurance and retirement and all that stuff into extremely complex stuff, so that the people on the other hand actually get it and don't think that I'm an annoyance of a foreigner who can't express himself in German. It's that important. It's the difference between actually getting your point across and communicating and getting what you want to get, which, in some cases it could be insurance or whatever, versus being completely stuck and having like the deer in the headlight moments. So deer in the headlights, I don't know if that speaks to you, but the moment when like, I don't know how to make this sentence. If you don't know how to make a sentence, it's probably because the sentence is too long or too complex. So I recommend you make a shorter one. You like one idea, one sentence, and it's okay. You can always cut a sentence into several. You always can. So Linda is saying it's so hard for me to make short sentences. I need to channel Ernest Hemingway. Well, you don't have to have the style of Hemingway because he was a great writer. So the style is something else, of course. You don't have to have a good style. You just need to be able to make a sentence with fewer words. So like, subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object. And if you have to repeat words, I know it's also something that for some reason my students struggle with when I encourage them to repeat words. We have had it nailed into our head as kids that we shouldn't use repetition, that is bad style, and you should just speak by using the same words again. But guess what? If you're speaking a foreign language and you don't know many words, you will repeat the same words, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there are lots of natives who have rather few words. The French natives that have the least words have 500 words that they use regularly. So imagine, like, with 500 words, you will repeat the same words all the time. And I'm not saying that they are examples. I'm not saying that they are your ultimate goal or the thing, like you should aspire to become able to be fluent with 500 words. It's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that at the beginning or at like any point on your journey when you're not having the capacity yet to make those large sentences, then you should be able to make shorter sentences and repeat the same words. And it's not shameful. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a great strategy to be able to make sentences that are short and to use the words that you can use. So that was a long elaboration on the so-called universal hack. Just all that to say, make shorter sentences. But I swear, I spend so much time with my one-on-one clients to telling them, okay, like obviously you're stuck in this sentence. Can you make it shorter? Can you make more than one sentence? So that's super critical. And you should not even think of learning the rest of those 7 hacks before you have really understood like deeply this idea. Once you have understood this idea, you can actually move on to hack number 2, which is that you can make longer sentences risk-free thanks to 7 words in particular. So that's the beginning of the cop-out of the make shorter sentences jail sentence, is that once you have learned to make shorter sentences, what you can do is we call it coordinate. You can coordinate sentences. You can make the sentences longer by just connecting them. So you connect them with those words that we call in French conjonction de coordination. And there are 7 of them. And those are the safe words, so to say, no pun intended, the safe words that you can use, which they will not alter the grammar. So it's really just like it was one sentence and another sentence, and you can connect them with those 7 words. So I hope you're ready for the words. The words are number 1, et, which is like and in French. So I'm just typing it. Mais, which is like but, right? So if you want to mark opposition, you can use but. Ou, which is or. There's also an ou, which means where with an accent, but that's not this one. The ou that means where is a minefield. Don't try to use this one if you're not a very advanced learner. So mais, ou. We have donc, which you can translate as therefore, also very useful for explaining consequences. Then there's or, which is a French word, and that means however. Or, which is however, and then you have car or parce que. They work the same way and they mean the same thing. They both mean because. So mais, ou, donc, or, car, and parce que, those are the words that you can use to connect sentences together. So you can start making sentences longer by just connecting 2 short sentences with those 7 words. So I hope that makes sense to you. If you have any question or anything you'd like to comment, or if you want to try making a sentence in the chat, just go ahead. And I'm just going to drink a little bit of tea. I'm realizing I don't have water, and it's going to get complicated to talk for an hour without water, but I'll probably succeed. So the third thing that we have on the worksheet is avoid learning complicated blank with special structures. So the word that's missing in the blank is avoid learning complicated conjugation with special structures. Like I was telling you in the French Fluency Accelerator, we already have 2. Linda is saying that's only 5 words. Mais, ou, donc, or, car. Mais. Oh, that's 6 words. So car and parce que are 2. That's only 5 words. Or 6 words. Oh, yes, the last one is puis. I somehow forgot writing it. Puis, that means then. So yeah, that's the last one. No, mais is included. It's the second one. The last one that was missing was puis. So puis means then. 7 words. Right? Does that make sense this time? I think that's mais, ou, donc, or, car, parce que. Wait, mais, ou, donc, or, car, parce que. Puis, that's actually 8 now that we have puis. So car and parce que, you can either count them as 2 or as 1. Right, so the third one is avoid learning complicated conjugation with special structures. So if you've been learning French, you know that French conjugations are an utter pain in whichever body part you would want to mention. It's just, it's endless, and you can potentially learn conjugations, French conjugations, for the rest of your life. Of course, some of them are more useful than others, and you even have some structures that allow you to pretty much skip the conjugation altogether, and those are the ones that we will learn right now. So they're really, really super useful. So the first one that I suggest you learn is a conjugation that allows you to skip learning the future entirely. It's what we call le futur proche, and it's aller au présent, so aller in the present tense, plus infinitive. So what we call the infinitive is the form of the verb that you can find in the dictionary. So the verb that's not conjugated. So for example, I just wrote aller. Aller is the infinitive of the verb aller. Être is the infinitive of the verb être, which means to be. So it's the verb before we conjugate it. And so you have a lot of structures in French that actually allow you to use the infinitive and connect it with another verb. And that is great because you only need to know the conjugation of that other verb, not that of the infinitive. And as a rule of thumb, it's not a rule of thumb, it's actually like one of the very rare rules that has no exception, is that if you have 2 verbs in a row, the second one is in the infinitive. So this is huge because it means that you have a lot of the verbs that you actually don't need to conjugate. And when you know how difficult it is to conjugate French verb, or how much of a pain it is to learn them, knowing that you sometimes don't have to conjugate, it's really, really useful. Sometimes I also teach to my students a part of a conjugation and tell them to just learn this chunk and learn what it means and be able to use that chunk instead of learning the entire conjugation. So you don't have to approach conjugations in a way that is very, very scholar, very like school type, and learn all 6 forms for and all tenses for each verb. You might just decide that, okay, this is the bit that I need to speak, and that's fine to learn just this one bit. So the special structure number 1 is aller plus infinitive. So as je vais parler, I'm going to speak. It exactly corresponds to going to plus verb in English. So je vais parler is I'm going to speak. And that is used to express the future. So we also have a tense for the future, which is called le futur simple. But you can avoid learning that tense entirely if you use this little structure. So yes, you still have to know the conjugation of aller in the present, but hopefully you've already learned it. It's the simplest tense of aller. So I think that's worth it. And similarly, if you know how to use this one, you can also use other structures that are like that, which will allow you not to conjugate verbs. So these are things like pouvoir plus infinitif. So pouvoir means can or be able to. So you can say je peux faire ça. I can do this. And that allows you not to know how to have to conjugate the verb faire, which it's a difficult verb. There are lots of verbs that are difficult, and if you can avoid conjugating them, I recommend that. Another one is devoir plus infinitif. That means have to. So je dois faire ça. I have to do this. And again, you don't have to conjugate faire if you know devoir. And that works with any verb. So any thing that you have to do, you don't need to learn that verb of what you have to do. You just need to learn the verb devoir. So pouvoir, devoir. Then you have savoir plus infinitif. It's a bit annoying because savoir is one of the hardest verbs. But if you know it, you can avoid having to conjugate the others. So for example, je sais nager. That means I can swim. So pouvoir, devoir, savoir, plus infinitif. Those are great sentences, great structures that can help you just not have to learn so much French. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any question or anything you'd like to ask, please go ahead. I know I've dumped a whole bunch of words on you, so I want to make sure that it's digestible. I just wait a little bit of time to see if there's any question. And if it's all good, just give me a thumbs up or just say yes, all good. We can go on to the next part. The rest of the hacks that I have for today are about vocabulary. So all the hacks we had today before were about grammar, and the next ones I have are about vocabulary, because lucky you, you are an English speaker, and maybe you don't know this, but about 50% of the English vocabulary has come from Latin through French. So that means that unbeknownst to you, through your existing language, you know a lot of French words. You just don't know that you know them. And you just might not know how to recognize them yet. Or maybe you do because you've listened to me already. But this is the kind of things that I've been mostly sharing with my one-on-one clients and not so much on YouTube. So I'm glad that I get to share them today with you. So let's look into the vocabulary. So number 6 is harness the French vocabulary you find in English. So I'm just going to write that here. Harness the French vocabulary you find in English. So here is the trick. So it's a rule of thumb. It doesn't work every time. But if a word in English sounds fancier, then it is very likely to also exist in French. So a fancier word, like write fancier in the blank, is likely to also be in French. An example is, for example, if you're going down the stair, a fancier word for going down is to descend in English. And descend is in French, descendre. So in order to remember your French vocabulary, you can think of what verbs are more fancy in English, and then that could point you to the French word. Doesn't work every time, but it's a great way to expand your vocabulary rather rapidly. So do you have any ideas of these kind of fancy word that you have in English? Can you just throw me a fancy word in the chat and tell me, or just I will tell you if there's a French word that corresponds to that. And then we can move on to the 7th part. I don't know if you have ideas or not. Just just throw them in the chat, and I will catch them later. The 7th hack is that some word endings will actually give you French words. So I call that word endings that spill the beans because I thought it was a fun way of putting it. But really, for example, if you have an English word that ends in shun, such as nation, then the shun ending is the sign that this word has come from French, virtually unchanged. So, and all the endings in shun that become sion in French, and they will all be feminine. So la nation is the nation. And so the ending not only gives away the French verb, the French word that corresponds, but also it actually gives away the gender of that word, which is la nation. Sion is always going to be feminine. So an equation, for example, is going to be une équation, and that's feminine. And all of those words are going to be feminine, the words that end in sion. So that's one ending. If you have an ending in a word in English that ends in T with TY, such as liberty, that will correspond to T with TE in French. So let me write that out. Liberty is la liberté. And those endings with T are also feminine. If you want to learn the gendered endings of the nouns, that's very useful because it allows you to learn the gender of 39,000 French nouns within 18 minutes, I believe. There is a video on this channel which is called the French Gender Hacker, how to recognize a masculine or feminine noun. That's super useful. And in that video, you will learn that, for example, T is a feminine ending, and also that corresponds to the TY in English. And those are Latin/French words which you have in English, and that gives you away new French words. So that's super cool. I do have more examples which are on this page. Another kind that I love because it works almost every single time is, oh yes, Linda is saying the French Gender Hacker is a fun video because it's a game. Yes, it's actually a game. So I've made it with slides. And in the first slide, I show you the ending, and then you can guess if it's masculine or feminine. You have a couple of seconds, and then I will show you if it's masculine or feminine and the example words. So you have this a little game. You can count your points as you do it, and it tells you how it's a way of learning the genders, which is easy and fun. So yeah, totally recommend this video. It doesn't have that many views. I think it's around 200 views right now, but it really should have more because in my humble opinion, I think it's the best video that exists on the topic. There are other videos about that, but they're often kind of confused and not really well built for learning. Well, that one video, I created it for my students. Originally, it was a card deck that was on Tiny Cards, which was an app by Duolingo, but at some point, Duolingo decided to cancel the app, and so the things disappeared, even though more than 11,000 people were using it, and that really annoyed me. So yeah, I made that video to replace it, but so far it hasn't found as many people. So please use it. It's a great video. It will be very useful to you. Another way of finding French words is those verbs that in English ends in ate. So this ate ending always will correspond to ER in French. That's super cool because not only you get all those French verbs for free, but you also know the conjugation because they are completely regular. So it's the first group. If you know a verb that ends in ER, like chanter, or not aller, because that's always an exception, but chanter, manger, danser, all those verbs, if you know how to conjugate one of those, then you know how to conjugate all those verbs which end in ate in English and end in ER in French. So an example is meditate. That becomes méditer. You have assimilate, that becomes assimilate. So as I said, those are mostly fancy words that doesn't really correspond to the kind of daily words that you use, because in English, the daily words you use are often of Germanic origin. And there's actually a really good reason for that, for the words that are fancier to be French. It's because of the French invading England in the 11th century. So I'm sure you've heard of William the Conqueror, who was a Frenchman. I mean, he was actually a Northman from the north of France, which was probably originally a Viking, but then settled in France. And so those people were French speakers or speakers of an older version of French. And they invaded England and they basically colonized the country. And what happened is that all the populations that were here before became more like the peasants or the lower class of that society. And the French people who were the invaders, the colonizers, became the upper class of that society. And that resulted in this English language being extremely rich because it's like the mashup of those two languages together. And that's also why in French, we often have just one word for two words in English. So for example, I was thinking the other day of to handle versus to manipulate. You also saw one of those 8 verbs, and that becomes in French manipulate. And it's both handle and manipulate. And you can go like, what? Like it does not mean the same thing. And that does happen often, that we have 2 words in English with different meanings that have only one word in French. So for example, safety and security. It took me forever to know the difference between safety and security in English, because in French it's la sécurité. So safety doesn't have an equivalent. That's an exception to the TY rule that I just taught you. But la sécurité is like security, and it means both security and safety. So la sécurité. An example that's really, really telling, and I don't know if you've noticed it, maybe it has never shocked you because you're an English native, but in English, you have a different word for the animal that you eat and the meat of that animal. So you have beef, which is the meat, and your animal is a cow or a bull. In French, du bœuf, du bœuf is the meat, and un bœuf is the animal, and it's the same for us. Un porc is an animal, and du porc is the meat of it. Un poulet is an animal, and du poulet is the meat that we eat from that animal, the chicken. So it's really interesting. When I was a kid in primary school, actually, I had my very first English teacher, and I don't know if she didn't know the stories that I just told you about the French basically colonizing England and having like this class system. So she told us that in England, the Brits, they love the animal so much that they don't want to call the meat the same word as the animal, because for them, they need to dissociate it in their head. And when I was 10, I was like, I didn't know any better. I was like, sure, that sounds like a valid reason. Like, why not? Like, now that I think about it as an adult, I'm like, okay, this is so hypocritical. Like, that doesn't make any sense on a linguistic standpoint. But I guess it's easier to explain that to little children than to explain the whole linguistic history that I just explained to you, because we're adults and we don't need stories like children do. What about cochon and vache? So cochon is a word that you can actually use for both. It's true that we often use it more to refer to an animal. But for example, when I was a kid, my mother would say, on mange du cochon. And that would mean like we eat pork or we eat pig. And we knew it was the same animal. So yeah, cochon is definitely used for both. It's a bit more familiar and slangish and more like child talk than the word porc. Vache is the female. It's true that we don't use the word so much for the meat. It's because we do perceive la vache more as the animal that gives milk, not so much the animal that gives meat. So that's why we use the word bœuf, which refers to a castrated bull in French. Of course, when we eat beef meat, it might well be a female that happens. But yeah, it's more like the differences of within the species themselves and the way that we perceive them. But we know it's the same species. Great questions, by the way. So yeah, I think I've run out of my work. So I hope that you have completed the little worksheets and that it was useful. Please give me some feedback about the worksheet. Do you like it? Do you think it's good? Do you like to have it on one page? I strive to keep it on one page, so to keep not that many examples. Would you prefer to have it on more than one page and have more examples? I was just really trying to keep it concise and trying to keep this more like a space for us to exchange. I look forward to having it on Sunday as well. I hope that will allow more people to be here. Lots of people have said that they can't really make it on Monday, so I'm hoping that Sunday will be easier. And let's see. So if you have any questions, please type it in. I'm happy to stay on until the end of the hour if we have more questions. So yep, just feel free to type anything and just ask me anything. So just realizing we must hate birds because we call the meat and the animal the same thing. They are chicken, turkey, duck, quail, etc. Yeah, funny realization, right? Yeah, that's interesting because we actually aren't you actually aren't using the French words for those, and I do find it surprising because I mean beef, pork, and mutton, those are French words, right? Le bœuf, le porc, le mouton. But the birds indeed haven't really followed this fate. So I don't know if maybe the Norsemen didn't like to eat birds and they would only eat mammals. It's possible. Good question. I don't know. Is there anything else that I can help you with? Or would you like to throw me some fancy English words and I can tell you if we have a French word that corresponds to that? That would be fun. Like, I mean, I know that there is ascend, which is the opposition of to descend, the opposite of descend, but we actually don't have ascendre, and I don't know why. We only have monter, which is the same word family as to mont. And sometimes it could mean the same as mont if you're, it's actually difficult. I don't know an example of using the verb to mont in English other than in technology, which technology is a bit different, but flaunt is kind of fancy. I've seen this word before. I'm not sure what it means. I'm just going to Google it to see if there's a French word of that. Definition. My French flaunted is what? Oh, it would be se pavaner or show off, or yeah, I don't think that has an equivalent in French. Let's see what Linguet says. Exhibe, vanter. No, we don't actually have. I think it's it might be of Latin origin. It does look like a Latin word, but we don't really have that. So that would be vanter or exhibe in French. For the record, you do have a word for exhibit, for example, which is not the exact same thing as exhibit, not at all, actually. Oh, yeah, that is something I wanted to tell you, and actually I put a little warning sign here, is that sometimes you will have false friends, or not exactly false friends, but words that have their meaning twisted or changed when it changes languages. So either it was twisted from when the English borrowed it from the French, or it might have been twisted by having the French borrow it back. That happens. So for example, but we do say exhibitionist for someone who flaunts themselves. Yeah, perfect example. Thank you, Linda. So exhiber in French, it means to show, but it's often used in a sexual way, or a way of someone who would show off themselves naked. So that's the kind of thing that when I have students who want to speak about arts and all the exhibition that they went to, exhibition, one of those shun words, right? L'exhibition that exists in French, but it's not an art exhibition. It's an exhibition of someone's body. So an art thing is une exposition. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind, that sometimes, yes, the word does exist, and yes, it means pretty much the same thing, but not exactly the same thing, like small difference. So that's something, like, it's all those hacks, none of them is really foolproof. There's like 1% chance that you will run into a problem as a result of using these techniques. But for the 1% of the time when you will have a problem, you have 99% of the time when you will live a happy life and speak a lot more French than you think you could. So I think they're still worth it, but it might be worth taking a little side note. That's something I do with my one-on-one clients a lot. Like when we land on some of those, I heavily insist on the fact that, yes, be careful with exhibition, for example. Those are the kind of words that you need to flag them and be like, yeah, this one is a troublesome one. But other than that, for one like that, you have 90 words that you can totally use risk-free. Like, addition is une addition, subtraction is une soustraction, division is une division, and so on. And they have so many of those. So yeah, I think it was worth adding this bit. So thank you, Linda, for reminding me of it. Any more questions? Any more things that I could teach you tonight or today, since I guess it's the daytime for you? Connie, are you able to follow everything that I've explained? Is everything going well with your French study? I don't think you have told me in a while, so please give me some news since you're here. That'll be nice to have a bit of feedback. I know that you joined the French Life Launchpad, which is my small course, a while ago. So yeah, please tell me how it's going with it. And yeah, we do have a couple more minutes, 20 more minutes roughly. Woo, my teapot is really hard. That's what happens when you use both it's a really nice teapot of German china. Please don't mind the dark side on it. It's because I'm using a candle to warm it up. It's really nice. I'm very glad I got it. It's way too hot. No questions. If you don't have any questions, I'm gonna have to bounce because I can't really stay here discussing my teapot forever and ever. Tell me did you like the worksheet? Is it good? Like, does it add value? Is it worth making a worksheet and sharing it ahead of time? I would actually definitely love to have some feedback on the worksheet. Okay, Connie is saying, things are going well. I'm very confused about what you are talking about today. My printer is being annoying, so I can't really follow along with the worksheet. Okay, which part is confusing? I would love to re-explain some parts and just be a bit more detailed about it, maybe. Like, you don't necessarily need the worksheet, but yeah, it would probably help you follow along if you just have to fill in the blanks. But yeah, if you can ask a more precise question, like which one was confusing, again, just re-explain the the same one. That's, you know, that's the whole point of being here with few people on the call, is that I can give you more attention and re-explain the things that you don't really understand. Linda, are you using the worksheet? Is it being useful or valuable to you? Because that would be good feedback to have. I think you said you printed it at the beginning. I was writing down what you were saying and it seemed like you went from 3 to 6 and 4 and 5 were missing. Okay, how did I do that? So 3 was avoid learning. Oh, okay, I see why you would think that. Because 3 is to avoid learning complicated conjugation with special structures, and it's just a general hack. And then 4 and 5 are examples of those structures. So the example in number 4 was aller plus infinitive. That was one structure. I consider it to be different from the rest because it expresses the future. So it's like a completely different tense, while the others are more speaking about the present, which were pouvoir, devoir, savoir. So like, I can do this, I must do this, and I know how to do this. So does that help? Should I re-explain any of those? I mean, I agree that actually when I originally took my notes, I took them differently with a different numbering. And then I counted the whole hacks and I was like, it would be nicer to say 7 hacks than to say 4 with different parts within it. So that's why I cannot re-simplify the numbering instead of having this like really complex, like 4.4, 4.3, and so on. I do that in the French Fluency Accelerator, and I'm sure I'm actually not sure in the French Life Launchpad I might have been doing that. But in the French Fluency Accelerator, I have like 6 parts, 7 parts, and like sub parts in it. And I'm sure I take at least an hour checking the numbering every time I make a workshop. But I do think that those numberings are useful. I was like, for this kind of like little, you know, casual chat, it's definitely overkill. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, okay, it's 7 acts and number them with 1 to 7, even if the numbering is less categorized than in the other one. So yeah. Linda is saying, yes, I really like it. It's just about the right length, maybe a bit longer, like 1 question more, but I like it because it's a way to keep the video info. Yeah, that's basically what I was thinking. So that's the whole idea, that this you can use as a cheat sheet for your next French class, or if you have to write a French essay, or if you have to write an email in French, you can have this next to you and be like, okay, so how can I hack my French together? Similarly to how in some of the workshops of the French Accelerator, I have made cheat sheets that you can take away with you, which they won't teach you the whole content of the workshop, but they will give you fast access to the kind of thing that you might need rapidly. So yeah, I'm glad it works. I would actually love to have you try and use it, either as part of your one-on-one sessions with me, or your French classes or French emails, and just, you know, shoot me an email if you've used it and if it has been useful. And if you've tried to use it and it hasn't helped, please shoot me an email too and tell me, okay, like this and this didn't work. I didn't manage to use it in this and this situation. And then that would allow me maybe to make a better version later. Like, even though I've been studying for a while, I did not realize the 8 thing till today. Oh, really? Wow, I'm surprised that I never told this one to you. I keep teaching it to so many people. Yeah, the 8 thing is really useful, because if you look up all the verbs that end in 8, like you can Google that, English verbs ending in 8, you have like 200 of those, and almost every single one of them results in a French verb that corresponds exactly to this pattern. So it's really, really convenient. Like perpetuate would be perpetuer, assimilate is assimilate, associate is associate, dissociate is dissociate, and so on and so forth. Like, it's almost foolproof. It's very rare to find one that does not actually fit the pattern. So yeah, it's a good pattern to know about. Right. Is there any other question that I can answer? Anything that I can help you with? Any weird things that you have witnessed? Like, it doesn't have to be about the content of today. Just tell me anything that you have observed, that you've seen in French, that I can help. Yes, épilate equals épiler. So if you mean hair removal, yep, that's what it means. Épiler, we just use, we have an accent. because otherwise it would be épiler, right? But it's épiler with an accent. But yeah, sometimes you have like minor shifts in spelling like that. But yep, that works. That keeps working. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Like once you have learned that one, you're good to know so many words, and they are really advanced and fancy words. Like one example is procrastinate. That's procrastiner. That makes me think of procrastiner. That makes me think of a video with by Sebastian Marx, where he uses the word procrastiner, and he says that the French people, when they hear him say procrastiner, they say, "Oh là là, quel vocabulaire pour un Américain!" So like, what a great vocabulary for an American guy, you know, not a native of French. And he says that's because the French don't know that procrastinate is the word that also exists in English, and it means the exact same thing. And I felt like, yeah, like this is a great strategy on his behalf to use the words in English that he knows also are reflected in French. He could have gone one step further and say that it's not just procrastinate, it's all the verbs in 8. And you get so many verbs for free when you know that. And they're all super easy to conjugate because they're the first group. So that's, yeah, really cool. Learn it. It's so worth it. Like, you know, you learn that in 30 seconds and you have 200 verbs for free. Are there many false friends? With the 8 thing, not many. Like, it's very slim, like few and far between. Like if we were to pull an entire list of English verbs in 8, no, not in at, in 8. Big verbs ending in 8. How can I find them? For some reason, I'm not finding them now. I had a complete list. Verbs list. How funny. Excuse me for a second. I'm not finding the list. Verbs in... Okay, so I found it with English words ending in 8. So the problem is that here are listed as how many letters they have. So let's take 9 letters words, for example. Integrate, that's intégrer. Eliminate, éliminer. Calculate, calculer. Affiliate, affilier. Penetrate, pénétrer. Syndicate, syndiquer. Cooperate, coopérate, coopérer. Speculate, spéculer. Cultivate, cultiver. Correlate, corréler. Fluctuate, fluctuer. Appellate, I didn't know it was a word in English, but appeler in French, of course, we know it. Elucidate, so not all of those are verbs, so I'm keeping some, but let me just give you the link that I'm looking at. So there are very few false friends. Like I just picked the one with 9 letters just to give an example, but propagate, that's propager. Inanimate, inanimate, I don't know if it's a verb. Postulate, postulate. Repudiate, repudier. Incarnate, incarnate. Segregate, segregate. Actually, that one could be a... that one may not exist as a verb, but there is segregation, definitely. Conjugate, we know that exists. Conjugate, denigrate, denigrer. Vindicate, this one I don't think exists, so that's an example. Prostrate is prostrate. Inculcate is inculquer. Captivate, captiver. Enumerate, enumérer. Explicate, is that a word? Expliquer, of course, that exists. Yeah, there are very, like as you can see, very, very few false ones. Illustrate, illustrate, there you go, you got it. That's a great example. There are plenty of those. There are like hundreds and hundreds of those verbs with very, very few that will either not exist because they just happen to not exist, or maybe they've been forgotten in French, or have just a slightly different meaning. But yeah, it just, whenever you want to use one of those, use one. And it's not completely impossible that you'll stumble upon a word that means something different, or that you'll stumble upon the words that don't exist. You can always look it up, like if you're not sure, look it up in a French dictionary like Le Larousse. you open larousse.fr or maybe .org. I'm not sure which ending it is. But yeah, that works. And you can always research the definition of the verb in French to make sure it means the same thing. But you'll rarely have problems with this pattern. It's a great pattern to use. Circulate is circuler, replicate, repliquer, formulate, formulate, and so on and so forth. I'm amazed that I never noticed this. Miss pattern recognition, I'm going to lose my union card. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's I actually don't think that anyone taught me this. I just kind of probably noticed it at one point and started teaching it. I don't want to claim that I found it myself, because who knows, maybe it was taught to me at university at some point and I just forgot that it was taught to me, but I can't remember where I found that. I just kind of maybe always knew. But yeah, eliminate, eliminate, and so on. So yeah, we've got another few minutes. So if you got any question, either about this pattern or another, I think it's the funniest pattern because it's not the exact same word. Well, because like the one with the shun and the t. Oh, one that you have which is the exact same is the chur. So for example, la culture is culture, la nature is nature, and la confiture is jam. And that's actually a bad example, but chur, if you have something that's in chur in English, it's very likely to be the same in French, just pronounce it with tur. They are not a 100% thing. I mean, la voiture is not a voiture, the car, right? But yeah, culture, nature. Nurture would be a false example because nurture is not a word in French. We would tend to say culture for that. But that's one of those. I'm wondering if I can think of some others. Oh, a thing you have in English is that if it ends in li and it's an adverb, it will often correlate with something ending in mon. It's not a 100% thing, but the thing is that often you will have to recall another verb. So for example, happily will correspond to heureusement, but you will have to know that heureux is happy. I need to find some examples where it actually matches exactly. I should have thought before I gave this example. Maybe it's a bad example. Gladly, thoroughly. I'm only thinking of li words that are from German origins. Maybe did you not use the li things for Latin origin adjectives? I mean, gladly, but glad is from Germanic origin. Actually, like, yeah, forget this one. It might not correspond so much to actual French patterns. It's just that li would correspond to the non ending in adverbs, but not so much that you can alter them one by one. So if you don't have any other question, I'm gonna bounce. So you have a couple more minutes to say something, or just go digérate. That doesn't exist, but digérer is the French word. Go digérer the new patterns or the new vocabulary. I mean, you like in this one session, you might have learned hundreds and hundreds of vocabulary words when you think about it, because all those words that you know in English that ends in shun or t or chur or the 8 verbs. That's oh yeah, exactly, exactement. Well, exactly. So there you go. I see I'm getting darker and darker here. It's interesting that it's so dark, even though it's not yet 8 p.m. I guess it's probably because I did not turn on the light and I was estimating the daylight. But yeah, so Connie saying thank you, Andrew. Our oh gosh, did you write that just for me to try to pronounce it? I enjoyed our once again. Well, it was nice to have you back, Connie. It's always sweet to have you on. So thank you for being here. Linda is saying immediately, immédiatement. Great example. Just, I know you don't have accents, but I'm just going to give them to you immédiatement with an accent. So, right, yeah. Thank you for being here. If you have watched the entire recording of that, that's amazing that you've been here. You can always use the comment sections. I hope you knew that at the beginning, because I'm not actually I didn't actually say it, but yeah. And if you have watched to this point and you want more of my teachings, you can always join the French Fluency Accelerator. You have the link in the description below, and I will see you not next Monday, but next Sunday, since we're moving to Sunday. And I'm curious to see if it will allow more people to join, because it's true that Monday is probably not the best day. So I'm curious to see what will happen. And by the way, for the French Fluency Accelerator students who are used to having their live classes on Sunday, we will shift those live classes on from Sunday to Saturday. So we'll still be in the weekend for you. And then on Sunday, I will stick to doing the YouTube live here. All right. So thank you guys for being here with me tonight or today. That was amazing to have you. And I will see you next week, next Sunday. Bye, guys.